So my name is Kaustubh. It's pronounced Costub. And you can ask me again. If you say it really wrong, I won't tell you. It's the worst ever. So Blooma Tree Experts, the tree care contractors in Seattle. And I'm just going to dig into what is a generally boring topic, but it will hopefully be more interesting as we go through it. So we're going to start with what makes a good KPI. And if you don't know, KPI is the key performance indicator. Before we actually dive into that, I'm going to torture for a moment. And basically, we all here have known how to drive for 10 to 30 years, right? When you were learning how to drive, to gauge how fast you were going, you needed the speedometer, right? Today, we don't really look at our speedometer as we're driving. And so when we buy businesses from retiring owners, that's sort of where they're at. They don't need the speedometer. They've built that gut sense of how fast they're going, how the business is doing. We're buying their business with no experience in their industry. For my case, no experience operating. I need the speedometer. It doesn't make you a good driver to have a speedometer, but you need a speedometer to know how things are going, right? So that's why we're doing this, and I'll mention that for more later. So what makes a good KPI? So a useful KPI helps you understand how things are going before they actually go bad, right? That way you have time to make adjustments. There's a lot of vanity KPIs that'll get likes on Twitter. That's not what we're doing. I don't really track revenues and output. And KPIs clarify your priorities. You've probably heard the thing whatever you measure is what gets managed. That's sort of where KPIs fall in. By choosing what you're measuring in your KPIs, you're deciding for you, for your team, what's actually important to the business. And despite all this, delivering strong KPI results is not the goal, right? I think sometimes people get wrapped around what was my year over year on some specific KPI. So what we're doing here, KPIs for you to manage your business better. The output is different that you're solving for. And so as we evolve, you keep recalibrating your KPIs. You don't want to get stuck on hey, this made sense for year 1 and 2, and therefore I'm doing it for the next 7 years of my whole period. Evolve your KPIs to figure out what's actually helping you in the business. This is the truth. So I start with this, which is what is a leading versus trailing KPI? This is just a normal P&L that I'm sure you've all seen in your businesses. And the point I'm trying to make is at the bottom of your P&L is the most trailing, right? By the time your bank account changes, it's way too late to do anything about it, right? And tons of business owners, they are checking their bank account every single day to see what's happening to their cash. And they're 90 days past when that change in cash was determined. And so if we move up the P&L, revenue is the most leading indicator on the P&L. And that's where I think a lot of people focus on. That's why they talk about how much revenue their business makes. But what I want you to start to do is to move above revenue, right? And so I flipped it sideways now, so it's easier with the slides. Now let's call revenue tripling, right? And let's say you own a widget maker, which is what every private equity guy thinks of businesses. So a number of widgets times the price per widget, that's your revenue, right? So now you've got 2 leading KPIs. How many widgets did you sell? How much did each widget cost? Now let's take number of widgets. You make that trailing, right? That's number of orders times how many widgets per order, right? So you can manage this instead. You can tell your salespeople, hey, we're doing great on your number of orders. I need you to sell more widgets per order, right? You're moving up to trailing, from trailing to leading. So let's go further. Number of orders is your trailing KPI. Now you talk about website traffic. If people buy on your website, times the conversion rate, right? That tells you how many orders you get. So now you can think am I going to try to push more people to my website, or do I optimize my website to improve my conversion rate? Right? These are 2 leading KPIs of number of orders. And then the last one, if we're trying to do website traffic as your trailing KPI, that can be organic search plus paid search. So now you're at, okay, am I managing my paid search, my account, or am I going to manage my SEO, my offline SEO or off-page SEO to drive people to my website? So you got to pick basically how far the scale you want to go. You can kind of see if you could kind of do this forever. It could keep going, and at some point you can't actually manage it, right? So you want to try to keep going up the scale to something you manage that's people in your business are accountable for. And so if you take a minute here, if you weren't allowed to look at your financials for the next 3 years in your business, what would you track? How would you know if things are going okay? So take a beat to think about it. And so, no, you can't track EBITDA. You can't track gross margin. You can't track revenue. You can't track cash in your bank account. You can't track the number of boats in your driveway. You can't track how many Twitter followers you have. So raise your hand if you have an idea for your business. Include what type of business you run and what's a non-financial KPI that you would track. Same.
Dollar volume bids on the street for the business.
Nice.
Yeah, in the context of fitness centers, membership, attrition rate.
Nice.
More locker, we track concepts, like the transaction concepts.
Nice. Yeah, that's it. Say that again? Oh, for Grease Monkey. Not for live. Yeah.
In the TikTok space, we end up sampling a lot, sending out cards and memos, all that stuff. So I would track samples deployed, not just the return on sample.
Sweet.
How do you guys do that forward?
Oh, these are all great. So that's the idea, right? Like, I think most of you can figure out for your own businesses what this should look like. It's really understanding the key drivers of your business. But how do you actually track, right? And I think this is the challenge a lot of searchers run into, or any kind of new operator, is you want the right SaaS product, you want the right data flow, you want the numbers to actually make sense, like you want to automate everything into your KPI tracking. And I'm going to try to convince you to not wait for that and just start. And I'll show you, this is going to be all how do I track KPIs in my business. I've gotten a little bit better in 2 years. I do have some of the software now, but a lot of this is still what I do. And you'll see the data's updated through 2 weeks ago. So these are the leading indicators I care about, or I've cared about for 2 years. I've added stuff over time, but this is what started. So number of bids we give per week. So that's a leading indicator of sales. Number of booked jobs per week, which to me is a leading indicator of our backlog and allows me to manage capacity. And then actual backlog in a week. So this measures sort of breathing room. If our backlog goes too far, then I know I can make staffing choices that allow us to pull it in. I can manage our seasonality with backlog. So these are the three I'll start with, or I did start with, and I'm going to walk you through how I measured these. And by the way, feel free to stop if you have questions.
I do, but you're going to get to it. Sorry, but I guess my question would be, how do you know where it needs to be? Do you start with the goal and then work backwards from there? Is that how you're doing it?
Yeah, so the framing in my mind is, if the goal, there's a ton of goals here, obviously, for what you want in your business, but for a moment, if you said the goal is to increase the value of your business, and the way you do that is to increase the EBITDA of your business, and to do that is to increase the revenue of your business, I'm looking at what are the levers that I have control of, in theory, that will tell me if my revenue is increasing or not.
And so you're just using the historical revenue or EBITDA as a baseline, and saying, okay, you can be above this or it's increase the value. Pretty much.
Well, no, okay. Your question is, it's really you start tracking it, and then you eventually it's month 2 you have month over month data, month 13 you have year over year data. It just compounds over time. But in the first 9 months, 12 months of owning your search bot business, you have no fucking idea, right? That's I don't know if it's good, and I'll show you that. So let's start with number of bids. So this is the number of bids we gave a month in 2022, right? And so I bought the business in February, and I went back and counted. I pulled it in for January, and you can see I'm all right, this is going great, right? Number of bids going up month after month after month. We get to July, that's the highest number of bids we've ever given, and I'm okay, we're killing it. This search deal is going to go amazing. I'm fired. Turns out people take school breaks in August and we're residential tree care. Nobody actually wants to bid in August. Everyone's on vacation. And so, the first time that happens to you as a searcher, it is terrifying. Because you're is that the end? Am I going to default to Lisa tomorrow? Sure. Right? That's what that moment is. The issue though is if you're not even tracking that, you're not going to know that something might be wrong. It turns out we have seasonality, so it turns out that's okay. But if you don't know that, like this could happen and you won't notice it on your cash account until 3 months later when all those lack of bids turn into a lack of sales. And then the lack of sales turn into a lack of completed work. And so right? Like September, October is our other busy season. We have sort of one busier season in like late spring through early summer, and the second season kind of going into winter to prepare for storm season. So then, and then like going into Christmas holidays, it slows down again. So this was year one of tracking. This is like what you were saying. Like, this is baseline here, right? This is me understanding what does our business look like, what's the seasonality of our business look like, and so then the following year, so orange is 2023. Same thing, right? It's still going up. We're sort of beating last year a little bit, so that all feels good. But now I know August is going to be bad, and I can market against it a little bit to try to offset some of the seasonality. So I can up my marketing spend. I can focus emails to customers in that month rather than doing it in July, because people are going to call in July anyway, right? And so in August, so that's our peak again is in July, 2023. But in August, it's a meaningful difference, right? I spent money to get that, to be clear, right? Like, it's not like automatic. It's not because I'm tracking KPIs that happened, right? You then go manage your business. But like, you don't know to manage the business in August unless you have the KPIs for tracking. So I just want to make sure that this continues to be clear. KPIs are not the goal, right? Like, creating the pretty charts is not the goal. This is supposed to help you know what you need to do at what time of year and how you should manage your business. And same thing, like the fall was stronger and then the winter was slower, right? Like this makes sense to me. I understand what's happening. And so when we go through to 2024, like a lot of this I feel like is managing your personal psychology, right? As you're dealing with your business. This gives me like solace, like I find peace in the numbers. It might be different for you, but this to me is sort of like, okay, January is gonna be weak. That's okay. We're going to do maintenance on our trucks, right? Like, it changes your approach to January as opposed to being like, man, I don't get why are we not hitting 200 bids a month?
Did it just spawn more KPIs? Like, okay, now we're like higher customer acquisition costs. Like, is it actually more profitable? Like, what are more KPIs that came from that?
Eventually, yes, but honestly, you're right. I'm really bad at that part still. That's like the next evolution of my KPIs is getting clearer on CAC by channel. Any questions at this point? Red arrow telling you slow down. So how do I measure the number of bids? So this is the part that's important, right? It's like, if you don't have the software day one in your business, and you probably won't, how do you start tracking your KPIs? So this is what our bid calendar looks like for one given week, right? 3 different colors for 3 different estimators. And it's like, okay. So like, I made this really cool little Google Calendar Zapier function. I'll show it to you. No. I counted by hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Actually, just that like literally, and I'm not joking. I do this still. I now have software that tracks this, but like I'm like for me, this is bringing peace to my business to be like, I know how many bids we gave this past week. Yeah. In case it's so on my screen, I like put it. It doesn't actually take that long, right? It's like pretty quick. It's way faster at setting up that. I don't actually understand those functions yet. So what I do, and we're just 3:30. Yeah, no, I'm waiting for Max to finish. Yeah, I'm able to figure out to do that.
Sure.
And so this is the spreadsheet. 39 circle. That's that week. That was like what the 3rd week of March. And I type in manually 39. The rest of it calculates, right? What is the last 2 weeks and what's our year to date and what does that compare to year over year? But the actual data entry is by hand, manual, and doesn't take that long. And like, this is amazing data for me to have, and it's just not that hard. If you're like, oh, you don't need this to be perfect and smooth and easy, right? So that's the 117 weeks that I've owned the business, and every week is put in my hand, right? It takes like 10 minutes a week to do this. And I have the data. I feel like I'm connected to the business in a specific way. So again, the key takeaway here is like, just don't overcomplicate this. Like, start getting data on your business as soon as you can, because then you need you need to start it to then have month over month and then to have year over year. Yeah.
And a lot of us have heard about being able to, at some point, get just a touch further away from the day-to-day action. Well, if you can have somebody in business counting, putting the number in the spreadsheet,
And sending your rich.
you're sitting in Timbuktu,
Yep.
you're going to know like, the pulse of your business in that given week from Timbuktu.
So that'll be the next step in my business is outsourcing the entry of this. I haven't done that because I feel like I get a lot out of doing that myself and feeling the flows of the business in a way. Like when I worked in private equity, there's really good export tools to like take public financials and put them into Excel. This is like my most boomer take, but like I would always put them in manually, sell and figure. Because I feel like when I did that, I was like, wait, why is this number this high? I would notice it in a way that's different. I didn't smart than me. I don't need to do that, but that's what I do.
I feel somewhere for what it's worth. Like the manual helps me think about it, but I've seen you tweet and debate like hiring another crew and like getting another crew for capacity.
Yeah.
And you might be getting there, but like when do you look at that and say like, okay, my crews can handle X number of jobs, like I'm ready to buy a truck.
So to me, that's my backlog measure. So I'll talk about what we get the backlog. That one.
I assume, so this is just number of bids that you guys are providing.
Yeah.
You have another tracking mechanism for bids that actually closed.
That's a good one. Okay. So the other part of Excel is booking email sent. When I bought the business, we didn't have invoicing software. We now have one. But at the time, whenever somebody approved the bid, we sent an email to them saying your job has been confirmed. We had a little template and subject line. So, booking email sent is roughly book jobs per week. You have to like do some fixing, sometimes revise the job schedule or whatever. So I kind of count those out in my head. But so I had no software to track this. So I went into our sent email folder, filtered by the subject line, counted how many emails there were until the last day. That's it. But this is basically a proxy for closed jobs. Again, now I actually like know how much like I actually sold per week. I know how the actual bids we gave, how many bids closed in our CRM. But I still do this, right? Like I have it all in reporting now. I still find this really helpful to get a sense of like, because the other thing that's best for me, I can tell when our sales guys are kind of feeling love, right? Because like they feel it very viscerally. Did I have a good week or a bad week? This tells me that they have a good week or a bad week in a slightly different way. Because like last 2 weeks or year to date, that's what I really care about, right? Because I don't actually care about what any given week looks like, but my sales guys feel every week, week after week. So that sort of gives you that, like, where is their headspace? Where is their, like, do they need that, like, push of good feedback? You know what I mean? Whereas I'm trying to track really, like, year to date numbers because that's the most conservative for my business. Yeah.
So why specifically year 2 weeks? Last 2 weeks, that's another, time.
For me, it was primarily just like some sort of a smoothing function. Like I've also done it as last 4 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever. It's really like the week to week is too random.
Right.
And so like there's not actually that helpful of data. I need to smooth the data out a little bit to see trends. Okay, sorry.
How do you think about teams? So you said every job and what's going to go over for jobs. Yeah, receive
Yeah. So now we'll go to backlog, which was question. So backlog is like our business operates where you book a job, it's on our schedule, and generally, depending on the time of year, we're at varying levels, weeks of backlog. So we don't, unlike HVAC or plumbing, which is more of a dispatch model, right? Our model is you build out a backlog and then you do the project work over time. And so the goal is like just keep refilling the backlog every week. But this is where if you're not paying attention to this in my business, I talk to tutorials all the time. Like, I don't know what happened. I'm a week out and I have nowhere to send my guys, right? Like, I could still end up a week out, but I'll know it's coming. That's the only difference, right? Like, they are often caught off guard that they don't have jobs the next week scheduled. That's never surprising to me. Knowing that doesn't solve the problem. You could still end up with not enough jobs, but you get like 3 weeks of heads up that you're going to have a problem. And like, that's kind of the difference, right? And being able to run your business sometimes.
Like, does that mean you're giving me basically this is your forecast. So like your sales team, you know, they don't really know like what their conversion rates are probably, right? They can't give you maybe like a judgment. I'm like, well, I think this one's gonna go, this one isn't. But like it's better so you can look historically, what are the conversion rates and assume that's gonna continue, and there's the forecast.
Well, in the, there's actually like some issues with that, but
Okay.
that's in theory, that's sort of, yeah.
Okay.
So our business books jobs, we set up, like I said, so like how do I tell if we have enough jobs booked at the end of October to get through the slow winter season, right? And this is one of those where you just need data, and then after the first year, you kind of have an idea, right? So the former owners would just lay off the team in January, February every year. Like we have 2 crews, we lay off 1 crew for January, February, and that's how they ensure they would run out of backlog. And like every year, you have like a few guys who are now they're like pissed off. They won't come back in the spring. You invested in their training all year. You lost all that. Like I was pretty set that like, I didn't want to do that, but like I think it's back to the business. I don't want to do that personally. I get that there's some businesses that are just so seasonal you have to do that. Seattle has a moderate enough winter that we don't have to do a seasonal layoff. But that means you have to run the business a little bit differently, right, than the former owners. And so this is what backlogging weeks is literally. I'll just show you the calculation. So it's first I say how much capacity do we have, which is basically like 2 crews at 40 hours a week means I have 80 hours job capacity a week. And so I look at it over the next 12 weeks because that's kind of the furthest we'll ever go out. And then how much that capacity is booked. So that's also measured in hours. And so then however many hours we have booked divided by our average weekly capacity is our backlog in weeks. The reason I do average is because when you have holidays, it's not an ER week coming up. So kind of the average for 12 weeks forward is usually more like 76 or 78. So that's how I measure backlog weeks or calculate it. So how do I actually figure out the booked hours? So that's weird, unfortunately. This is our jobs after. So you can see kind of the red spots or open slots. Everything else is booked for this given week, right? And that's 2 crews, which is why there's 2, sides to each day. And so in this example, if you counted it all up, I basically have 3.25 hours open on Thursday, and 4.5 hours open on Friday. It's a little confusing. The bottom purple boxes actually marked as leave open for like rush jobs and stuff like that. So I have 7.75 hours open in this given week. And so what I do is I have a next 12 weeks table that I update each week. And for each of the next 12 weeks, I plug in how many hours booked versus open. Again, I'm just doing this in a spreadsheet, right? This is not that complex. And the rest of the spreadsheet just updates from there. It just does the math. And so this is what the spreadsheet looks like. So that week, April 1st, I had 936 hours of upcoming capacity. We had 560 of those hours were open, and so we had like 376 hours booked, and that translates into 4.8 weeks of that. That's it. That's like the whole thing. And the one thing I want to flag here, which I didn't notice until after I made the slide, honestly, going back to the idea of like you don't need to be perfect. Like if you notice the week prior is the same as the week before that, it's not because it was the same backlog, it's that I missed that week. I just copy paste it on. Right? Like sometimes you just don't have time, you don't do it. It's fine. Like don't stop doing this because some weeks don't happen. So like March 25th week is just a copy paste because I can't there's no way for me to go back and see what was my backlog because we roll forward a week. So there's a lot of the weeks in my tracking that are just like a couple weeks of flags that I'm super busy and then I start counting. So I can write you through this. So 376 hours divided by 78 hours per week, 4.8 weeks of backlog, and don't have time. So this is the chart, right? And this is sort of why this is helpful to your question, Patrick. So when I bought the business, this is March 2022. It is the tail end of our slow season. But the former owners would lay off a crew for January, February, which I knew, but I didn't quite understand the impact on the business. So I bought the business with 11 weeks of backlog. And I was like, sick. Like, we end the winter with 11 weeks of backlog. Like, this is amazing. Not really understanding it. And so, year 1 goes great, right? We go through a little fluctuation. We work through it in the summer. We build it back in the fall. And I'm going into year 2, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to let people off this time. I know I need to build some more backlog, but I don't have this real idea of how much backlog I need. And so this is what happens, right? So when I get to like March, April, we're in a little under 4 weeks of backlog. And like, I don't know how many of you had this moment in your business, but like, your shit breaks when this is happening. You have no idea when it's going to turn around. You don't know what's going to make it turn around. Like, this is when I was like, oh, should I do direct mail? Should I increase my Google Ads? Like, I have no idea, right? And I don't know what's normal. And I know it's not the same as last year. And so I know something's wrong. And like, the confusion I had at the time was when you look at the financials of my business from before I bought it, March is when revenue goes way up because it brings it back. And then they'll start to work through all this backlog they've created. So in my head, the seasonality turns in March, right? And so I was sort of like, okay, this is fine, this is normal. And when we got to March and it kept going down to April, May, that's when I freaked out because I was like, I thought seasonality turns in March. What's going on? It turns out it's not the seasonality revenue that matters. It's the seasonality increase, right? The seasonality increase doesn't turn around until April, May after tax day, right? So we're now actually at the end of our slow season, like right now. We'll now pick up from here. And because I didn't get that from last year's data, right? So this is where like you kind of miss the boat and like you have to recalibrate. And so like we managed to do it. I spent a buck ton on marketing to do this, and like, then I had to your question, right? Like figure out if it's actually good LTV to CAC, right? Like, but primarily I was like, do I have jobs for my ads or not, right? In that moment,
And the point being, you to manage your business off of P&L, you would have mismanaged this.
we would have driven students up. Yeah. And so this year, same thing. We're a little bit better, but like now I'm not afraid of that. I know when it should turn. If like in the next 4 weeks, if we don't see a good turnaround of backlog, then I know I have a problem. So I don't know if it's still gonna work, but I know what to look for. Yeah.
How do you wrestle with like maybe something that's qualitative, like tell a homeowner like we can't trim your trees for 12 weeks.
Yeah.
They go or like
Well, so that's to your question of when you have crew, right? And so what I've found is like when you hit 10 to 11 weeks is really when people are like, it's just not worth it to us to work with you. And so like we've never crossed that barrier. And so to me, what that says is like, okay, if last year is instructive, and like let's say we get to like September and we're 2 weeks of backlog ahead of where we were last September, that to me tells me that we have room to increase capacity, right? Because I don't want to end October at more than 11 weeks, because I know the market will.
do you have customers saying like I'll pay extra to like do it next week?
Yeah, so that's why like I leave some slots open in the calendar where like if they're super intensive, I will say we can do it. There's a rush fee.
One of the reasons I'm so engaged because this model is so almost eerily similar to my garage flooring business.
Yeah.
Garage flooring, backlog, you have crews, you can't forecast, like everything. Seasonality, which I had no idea how like the seasonality, like you said, you see the revenue, you're like, yeah, I assume that it's pretty flat, but you don't see like the lag. So anyway, my question is, sometimes you see like this kind of uptick in demand or something, and like you don't really know if that's stable or predictable. If you add a new crew, there's a lot of fixed costs to that, even if you end up laying them off, right? So do you at that point I'm deciding like, well, do I sub that out until I determine that it's repeatable or not? Do you have the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is part of what makes a seasonal business fundamental weaker business. Right? You can't grow it in the same way unless you're willing to take way more risk. So like that incremental growth in your business, like the cost of capital is much higher than if it were a steady year-round business.
And the demand is, well, I mean, I don't know how much you usually repeated versus like projects. Of the one-offs you can't forget that.
So our business is about 65% repeat. It's that 3-day focused treatment business, but the one-off side, the last 35% is massive swing factor, right? In how you operate your business. Yeah.
Do you have a way of knowing like, okay, we're having increased demand year over year or period over period. This seems like it's repeatable. Let's hire more. Like, how would you determine that?
Short answer is no. But like, this is to me how I start to like get a gut feeling for that. Like I don't have an internal benchmark of like if we are at 5 weeks of backlog in May, we gotta build crew for the summer. It's gonna be more of a gut feeling. Like I'm sure a better brain than me could figure out a way to like really do that. But I'm trying to this is my speedometer, right? Like this is how I'm trying to like gauge. And then I'm trying to figure out, okay, like can I go 5 over, can I go 10 over, or should I go on? You know what I mean? Like it's not a clean answer. At least in my experience.
In regards to reaching revenue, like how often do the customers come back? It's like once every year, once every 3 years, 5 years, it's typical.
Yeah, so we have a wide range is the thing. So if we did like a large evergreen tree, it could be once every 5 to 10 years. If we did fruit trees or a hedge, that could be every year. And so like I don't have a ton of forecast of visibility. Like one of the goals eventually is to like actually organize my customer list by type of work we do for them and a cadence of work, and that way we're telling them like, hey, it's time for your work again. I'm basically.
That's gonna be 2025, right?
They're my bitch. Yeah, 2026. Yeah. And so, or sorry, and then questions. Okay. That's oh yeah, that's
No,
so
talk about seasonality, but
yeah, no, it's hard to yeah. Well, so the clicker just go backwards, but that chart that has like seasonality in it on backlog, you have a choice as a business owner. You can have your revenue and cash flow be seasonal, or in our type of business, you can let your backlog be seasonal, right? And so like we let October backlog go way up, such that revenue from Jan through March is more steady, because then we start to work through that backlog. The alternative, which is what the former business owners did, is they let their revenue be seasonal, right? And like they kept their backlog a little bit more steady. But if you have revenue being seasonal, it's really hard to lever the business with an SBA loan.
Because revenue and tracking your fruits.
Correct, exactly.
So you buy a business and things based on that P&L.
Yeah.
You can big time live on that.
Yeah.
But how do you get data?
No, this is the sort of like by the seat of your pants stuff. And like the funny thing was, could you go back a slide, by chance? So, like in January, February of 2023, like our backlog was okay, but I didn't really see that it was gonna go down this much. We beat our year-over-year revenue by like 50%, right? And I was like, oh, it's gonna be a sick year.
Because they had laid off.
Because they initially have fruits.
So revenue tumbles for your seller.
Correct.
You have to cycle through your revenue P&L was fantastic.
Exactly.
As you burn
as I burn the backlog all the way down this way, right? And so that's where like I made a choice to make, but like to be clear, my January, February revenue now looks a lot like my July, August revenue, right? And so I made a choice to make the revenue flatter, but it's this.
So when that allows you to support more leverage.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's the idea. That's the function of that, right? Like you can make your cash flow be less seasonal if you're going to ride this roller coaster instead. But if you don't know the roller coaster you're on, it's like no way to do that, right? So again, like I do think a seasonal business is like structurally worse than a non-seasonal business because you don't have to manage something, and so you can actually put your front foot forward, based on time of, regardless of time of year, you're just building month over month. For me, month over month is like a meaningless metric for the most part, right? It's really year over year. Okay.
So,
Yep.
And the quality of
Yep.
So kind of what is that?
I mean, the short answer is like we're doing more or less the same revenue now with 7 guys as we used to do with 10. So you get major productivity gains because you have the same guys for longer, they work together for longer, they all get better. So to me, it's like if we leave the pie the same size because we're doing all this funky management, but we have fewer guys, the pie gets split to each person gets a bigger slice. So that's like option A, which is sort of what I've done so far. And then option B is you just press the gas pedal as hard as you can to try to increase the pie. That is a better option, but it's hard to do a seasonal business. Yep.
So you're probably in the industry. What was it that made you that understand that this might be something that will attract not quite fit? And how did you identify something that I'm thinking about, but
That's a good question. Yeah. So the former owners, they would constantly ask our scheduler, "Hey, what week are you looking for?" Right? Like that was the question that they would ask the scheduler. Like right now, like are you looking like early May, late May? Like where are we at? And Amber, our scheduler, would give them an answer like, "Oh yeah, like I'm booking bigger jobs sort of late May, so what we can squeeze." So they had a gut sense of is that good enough, right?
Right.
And I was in this conversation being, I don't fucking know if that's good enough, right? Like, I have no way to tell. And so I was like, I need like, again, more maybe how my brain works, numbers to be able to like ground myself in what is good enough. I just like wrap my head around this.
So it's transitioning the conversation to the seller,
Totally.
and then it was translate that and then
And to be clear, right, like a lot of the small businesses that, or like small tree care businesses that get to zero backlog, those businesses don't have enterprise value at the end to sell to someone like me. The reason this business have enterprise value to sell to someone like me is because those business owners did that, right? Like they were good business operators in the sense that they were savvy enough to be tracking their backlog. They just tracked it in their head, right? Because they'd done it long enough. They had a good sense of what it should be, which is how we drive cars, right? But like I started to like showed up as a 16-year-old, right? And like so like that's sort of the difference there. But that's why this business survived, right? It's because they actually did manage their backlog. They just didn't manage it in a way that was legible to me at the start. Cool. So this was to your question about conversion rate, like would you assume conversion rate, right? So I want to show you one quick, like, real data point. So April and May of 2022, we gave 268 bids, which I was tracking. We closed 148 jobs, which I was tracking. And backlog went down by 27 weeks, which I was tracking. Great. Next year, now I've got year-over-year data. I'm like, okay, bids. Bids went up 35%. Great. Closed jobs went up 26%. So, there's some conversion rate down, but like closed jobs still up 26%. Great. Still went 4.7 weeks. And that's like a way bigger deal because we're only 4.2 weeks to start, right? And so this is where like, what's the missing link, right? Something I'm failing to track that is missing. I'm curious if you guys.
job size.
Exactly. Yeah. Average job size. Our average job size had dropped from and that's where you run into the qualitative, like how do I manage business? It was not 100% clear to me if this was a macro issue, right? Clients were actually tightening budgets. Because I saw some of that, like some of our heavy repeat clients, they do stuff like, hey, why don't we skip these 2 trees this year, right? So there was some of that going on. But also, like, we now had employees instead of people as opposed to former owners who are forced upselling, right? So there's some of that. But it's really hard to, like, this at least tells me what the problem is. It doesn't tell me how to fix the problem, right? But it starts the conversation in the direction. And then I sort of went through a process of coaching our guys and like building their confidence to be like, yeah, they might have told us to look at one Japanese maple, but you see there's 3 other trees here that would work. Like, just give them the option, right? They can choose for themselves. But which the former owners are very good at. Like, they almost didn't listen to what the client was asking for. They would show up, and kind of be like, oh, I'm really worried about this tree. And then they're okay. And then they're just like looking around at all the trees and writing every single thing up. And then they just present them all as options. They'd include the ask for work as the base, and then a ton of options, which a bunch of clients would accept because they're just like, yeah, it's just not sold out.
That's like that. I just want to say that's like that blind spot, and you can never see that until you're in the seat. Like how they did the bidding.
Well, but here's the kicker on it.
Yeah.
So in diligence, I went on sales visits with the 2 sellers. I ended up with each of them. I shadowed them for like a full day of sales meetings because I was worried. I was like, are these guys just like magician salespeople that I have to replace? Is that the secret sauce of this business? And I went and like, to be clear, they're good salespeople, but they're not like high charisma, like, all of that type of salesperson. They're sort of like, they're artists at their core. What I didn't understand is like, they are upselling shit out of every job in a way that I couldn't, I was not busy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I tried to figure that out and I schooled other. Does that make sense? As the solution was to spend time with the sales team on how to upsell. And this was challenging, right? Because in our industry, salespeople, they're not salespeople, they're arborists, right? None of our arborists are on commission. right? Like that's a part of like an ethics dynamic in our industry is like the arborists who are on commission push people to remove trees that don't need to be removed, right? So how do you push arborists who are, their sort of passion driven to upsell? Because to them, the word upsell feels like slimy car sales stuff, right? So we've had to coach them to be like, well, no, the client just doesn't know what is needed at their property. You're providing them information of, hey, like, while we are here, it is cheaper if we also handle your 120-foot fur. They wouldn't know to ask for that. It doesn't mean they don't want it, right? Until they've been told. And so we've gotten much better at that. And we had one example like 3 months ago where we're experimenting with expanding the Snoqualmie because Lisa lives there. So we started in Lisa's house, and then we're like, okay, there's actually a lot of nice spaces. Yeah. Yeah, we moved on iPads, but yeah, exactly. So we're testing out Snoqualmie, but it's a further drive from our base. And one of my salesperson complains to me because he's like, look, I'm going to drive all the way to Snoqualmie. This guy wants one like 10-foot tall tree removed from his driveway. Like, this is not worth it. Like, we got to qualify leads better. And I'm like, dude, it's a big property. Just go out. And the client's not even going to be there. He just wants to talk on the phone. Just go and like, I confirmed that he's fine with you walking the property. Like, walk the property. And so what should have been that one tree is below our minimum, right? Like less than $500. That ended up being a $5,700 that was accepted on the spot, like no, without even a conversation, right? And that for them, our arborist was a bit of an eye opener because he only put stuff on the bid that he thought was good tree work, right? He's not putting shit stuff on there. He just like the client didn't know that this is good tree work or this is something that will be beneficial in his landscape. So our arborist gave him that, gave him the option to say like, hey, if you want full tree care done, this is what it looks like. And the client didn't ask a question. He's like, yeah, great, and signed a $5,700 bid. So that I think like having those examples happen has been really reinforced with our arborists that like, hey, this is not slimy sales. This is actually providing and being a good arborist to your clients. So a few punchlines. So you need to identify leading KPIs, right? Do not track trailing KPIs. You're going to track trailing KPIs by default, right? But you need to figure out the leading KPIs that give you enough time to make adjustments before it's too late. Don't overcomplicate it. Just start tracking KPIs, build data. Like I now do track average job size in a different way because I was like, oh shit, like that's the missing link here. So I didn't have 2 years of data on average job size. I had like 8 months of data. But like you have to start once you realize. So you can always make those adjustments. What you track is you learn what actually matters. And like this is the hard thing I think for a lot of people in search, which is like if you come from a background of being type A, high achiever, and like some brand of perfectionism, like that doesn't work in small business, right? Like it does not work to be a perfectionist because like none of this is gonna be exactly dialed in the way in theory we would want, right? Like the amount, like the stuff I sent to my investors, which Sam says is pretty good. Like if I sent that to my PE partners when I worked at PE, it would have been like, what are you doing here? Conversation, right? Like the expectations are so different, but it's calibrated correctly, right? Like this is the amount of information I need to figure out how to run my business. It's not actually going to be incrementally helpful for this to be dialed into a further degree because I need the rest of my time to actually run the business, right? So this is where like, I think people get wrapped around the axle because they're trying to solve every problem. Like this is meant to serve you. This is not for your investors. This is not for your employees. It's for helping you wrap your arms around business that you like lever the fuck up and don't know how to run, right? Like you need this as a result. That's it. I got a lot of shit for buying Super instead of a pickup, but that's what I got. I haven't taken questions that are anyways. Yeah.
With all the KPIs that you track, and it's taken over a year to try to figure that out. How do you look at like full-time acquisitions now? Like, are you using similar metrics?
Yeah.
Not enough information. You can use those metrics. Like, how does that change?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think to look at add-ons within my space, I have a basic line of like they're never going to have those metrics for me, right? So I have some proxies for it, which is like what percentage of your business is pruning versus removal, because that's indicative of repeat revenue. I asked the question of is the owner climbing trees or doing sales or both? And to be clear, the business I bought, the two owners were climbing trees, both of them 4 days a week, and then the other day of the week they were in sales. It was like the highest order things business you picked up. And I now know when I look at a P&L based on what the owner is doing, what my replacement costs are going to be, right? And then I just have a lot of like conversations with them, say like, how far out are you booked? Like, what is the lowest you ever get? Like, are you a week out, or are you generally at least 3 to 4 weeks out? And like, what you'll find is a lot of companies in suburbs of Seattle are much more willing to go down to a week because they don't have the same permitting restrictions we do in Seattle. So like, if we're short of 3 weeks, like we might not actually be able to do work because we don't have the permits yet. So you run into those types of. So you ask these questions to try to figure it out.
How is the business doing overall?
Fine-ish. So, well, I'll say it this way. In March, so I just closed an add-on acquisition 2 weeks ago, which is exciting. Which is the first one. It's not close to April 5th. So in advance of that, I decided to take 2 weeks off from the business in March, partially as a stress test for the rest of the team to see what falls through the cracks. Partially because I just worked out. And so the only thing I retained while I was on vacation was I did payroll for like 2 weeks, and I kept the acquisition ball rolling. And I got like 6 texts and 2 calls in 2 weeks. And so I know the business is in a better state than it used to be, but I burned a fuck ton of EBITDA to get there, right? Like, so it's unclear, like, from here, do I now have the ability to actually grow EBITDA? But the business as an operating entity is clearly in better shape than it was 2 years ago. So that's what I tell myself, at least.
And this may be kind of into the prior question, but now that you have this jobs data, say you get 12 weeks and you're seeing yourself at 13, 14 weeks, but it's not consistent enough throughout the year for you to actually bring out a full team.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to do tuck-ins because then you're getting the team and the jobs, or are you gonna stuff you can do overtime, get some contractors, how to play it?
I think it's a function of like in that moment, what is your risk profile feeling like, right? Like there's a lot of really good search operators who would run this much more on the edge than I am. Right? Like they would, and like because they have a faith in themselves to drive the growth side of it, right? Whereas like I feel less confident building growth in my business, so I'm being much more conservative on backlog management. But if you're like, hey, I have a pretty good systematic way to drive new leads and new sales, and all I need to do is like really up my spend in a specific way, and I know the LTV to CAC on that spend, then it's like, yeah, sure, like you could be way more aggressive than this. You could burn it down to 5 to 6 weeks of backlog with another crew because you know like the profit I throw off of that extra crew, I can put right back into marketing, and that's a flywheel that works. The challenge is like I don't feel like I have to do it. And so like, I don't feel confident like if I put dollars in, jobs come out in a predictable, consistent manner. And so as a result, I choose to be much more conservative on the backlog run or do organic growth.
Are you in an industry peer group or like compare with other tree guys? Like,
Not in a formalized peer group. There's actually now like 4 or 5 searchers that have got tree care businesses around the country. And there's one traditional searcher who had a bigger one in Chicago. And so I have an advisory board, so if that guy Kevin is on my advisory board, and like that's been invaluable to have access because he's running, like I don't know, I'm the biggest businesses, but like probably 8 times my size. And so like I'm like, hey, we don't have a good safety handbook. Like Kevin sent me his, I edited it, right? Like a lot of that stuff is super invaluable. And a weird benefit of being in a local home service business that I said beforehand is like if you go like 50 miles away, we're not competing anymore, right? Like anybody outside of our service area, or even if you said one of our adjacent service area, like we're not competitors. So when we added like healthcare, we were trying to figure out the specs for a spray rig, and like I became friends with an arborist in Boise, Idaho, who does a lot of plant healthcare. He sent me like literally the invoice and specs for his spray rig, right? And then we just adjusted the works for us. And he's an arborist. He like loves that we are trying to add this to our business. We're not competing with each other. It's really like a welcome community in that sense. And so I definitely underestimated how nice that would be. One of the ways I've built that out is I ran for the board of the Northwest chapter of arborists. And so I'm the only not certified arborist on the board, but I'm the treasurer, so it kind of makes sense. But like, it's amazing. Like they're all like, every single person on the board is super welcoming. They're like 50% excited I'm there, 50% like, why the fuck did you choose this industry? You know, like because they're all confused a little bit, and so I found a lot of really good true care contacts through that and our search community. And yeah, finding that in your industry is like such a game changer. You should learn like rules of thumb, like revenue per man hour, revenue per day, cruise size. Like, should I have a pocket truck with every cruise? Should I have like a chip truck? Do I need to have 750 or 5500 or is it some cap over, right? Like, you learn all the terminology from these people, right? And like, that's how you start like business.
Was your pursuit of understanding all your KPIs anxiety driven to understand what the answers were, or did you lean into your professional training and know that was the key to understand?
I think it was anxiety driven, and but like the way I knew in which to like assuage that anxiety was based on how I was trained, right? Like I knew that KPIs are helpful when running a business. I was feeling anxious that I didn't know how to run this business, and so that was like the solution I saw most clearly. I'm sure there's other things that I'm doing and things I'm trying to do now that I was not supposed to be like John in his book talks about, you know, like scheduling CEO time, right? 2 hours a week. Like one of my advisory board members told me to do that 2 years ago and I kind of waved it off. And it's like, oh, no, that was right. Like that's been right. I should do that. Right. So like there's a lot of other ways to solve the anxiety of running a small business. This is the one that was most comfortable to me, so I leaned into it.
2 years ago. How do you spend your day to day?
Too much. I'd say it is more
Ignoring the integration of this.
Yeah, ignoring the integration. The day-to-day tasks I've kept on my plate is I send out final invoices, I do payroll, I do bookkeeping, which I should outsource. That's like the true, and I do hire. That's the true day-to-day stuff I do at this point. And I'll do like the big customer escalation, like big issues. But when I started, the stuff that I've since delegated in the past year are like all the permitting I used to do, all the daily staffing, like what crews go where I used to do, all the ordering supplies I used to do, all the mechanic coordination I used to do. So like I've taken a lot off the plate too. And like I've only, I feel like in the past 8 months, focused way more on SEO and PPC management. Like basically the first year and a half, I took the view that like SEO is a black box. And then it turns out that's the actual trailing or the leading KPI for my business is really good SEO, really good local map pack rankings. And so I've spent the last like 7 months learning that because that's not for traffic. Exactly. So website right? Yes. Exactly. Like our percentage of branded search volume is way too high. Or I mean it's good that's high, but like it like people who are finding us, they already knew about us. We have not a lot of discovery because we don't rank very well on Google organic search. We do rank well with Backpack, so that's good, and that's part of why I love the business. But the SEO side, like I didn't understand that you have to really actively manage that, and so it took me a while. And I sort of outsourced it all to Scorpion, which I'm sure some people for both Google Ad Management and for SEO. And the problem you run into is like if you don't understand what you outsourced, like you can't hold them accountable, right? Like any question I would ask, I got an answer for. I was like, I'm this sounds reasonable. That's why you're top 10. Like fine. And it like I need to delegate all that stuff to then open up the time for me to go read like white pages about how SEO works, right? And then actually like wrap my heads around it. And then I cut SEO from Scorpion and I'm using mostly myself and one like freelance type of agency. And that's immediate. But it required like me having the time to like dig into the weeds because the problem is you have no like you're doing so much firefighting early on, you don't have that unstructured time to actually sit and work on something. So that those things have to happen in that order.
Then how do you want to spend your time in 2024 other than more deals, more
I think if the integration of this add-on goes well, and I feel like I have a handle on how this works, I think it seems clear to me that the highest return on my time is doing more acquisitions, which was not my original thesis going into this business. But I'm finding organic growth to be hard to produce in a systematic way. I don't personally have a really strong understanding of digital marketing, which I'm sure I could get help on, but like I talked to like 8 different digital marketing agencies, I get 8 different answers. I don't know how to solve it. Whereas I do know how to buy a business, right? And when I buy a business, I get whatever 8 revenue I go. It would take me a long time to generate that organically. So you pay a multiple for that, but you actually need the multiple.
And would you be willing to share about the transaction you just did?
Yeah. So we bought a local competitor 2 weeks ago. Really highly regarded company in the area. Like the owner is sort of like a legend in Seattle area tree care. She's been doing it for 24 years. And so we bought the business, but like for 2 reasons in this case, where one, you get a high quality crew, you get, a really good client list looks like ours, in Northeast Seattle, kind of region, like us and them ranked 1 and 2 on Google Maps. And they were priced below us by a decent amount. So like, if nothing else, we get rid of one of the low bids against us. There's no antitrust in Seattle specific. That is like meaningful for us. But the other element of it was like because of the amount of leverage we had, right? Like the debt servicing got really tight, right? Like when I closed, my rate was 5.25. Right now, whereas like 2 weeks ago, my rate is 10.5. Yeah. Right? Like that was painful to go through while you're J curving your business, like I was saying, to turn something operationally stable. And so one of the benefits in doing the acquisition was refining the SBA debt such that that 8 years left on my debt got stretched back out to 10 years. And so that lowers your payments on that portion. So even though my debt went up because of the acquisition, my payments went up by a little bit. And so that's like like financial engineering side of this that can be.
What's your SEO freelancer doing that Scorpion wasn't?
So I think what I figured out is that like what we were missing was the true like high DA backlink setup, and so I hired somebody basically just to place the links into like 20, 30, 40 plus DA websites, like guest posts basically. So he's doing that while I sort of understood more of the like core SEO stuff myself. Because the actual website is in good SEO shape. It's the off-page SEO that we're kind of bad at. But it took me like 3 months to understand. Right.
So all of the Blooma websites that they
well, I'm not being facetious. I reached out to 5 other contractors in Seattle who were searchers. I was like, hey, can we all put our websites on each other? And so like Corey at Washington Generators, like I put him as a contractor referral website. He has me as a contractor in Florida. Like I was like, Robbie reached out to me and he was like, can you put his pool company on Amazon? I was like, why would I put a Florida pool contractor on my website? He's like, whatever. No one's looking at it. That's that's aiming. They give it more systematic, obviously.
So maps first one sounds like that radio station. Yeah, in the brand. Pretty much they come back.
They have a broker, but I found out really fast. I'd already met the sellers previously from being in the industry, so we went from like listing to LOI signed in like 2 weeks. I don't know if they got other offers or not actually. On the brand, like the ideal outcome to me, which I don't know if this would be feasible or not, the ideal outcome is both consumers live on front end, but the team back end is all one. That we can kind of make the trucks and the staff like can go in between the 2 crews, because that's the scale benefit, right? I don't need the brand to have the scale benefit in the same way, and the brand like ours has a lot of brand equity. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to test out, say, can we keep both these brands alive as well?
We do have the same backend for 2 brands. Oh, you're curious what you're really.
Okay, so let's talk into this because I didn't know this sounds pretty bad. Okay, but yeah, I'm starting with that right now.
Cool. All right, the boss did tell me to wrap it up. So that was fantastic, and thanks for sharing this. I think